For many years as we grew up, I think most of you and I as well heard about why India's reforms, India's growth has been held back on account of being a democracy. Much doubted, slowdown of movement forward in our growth categories in various sectors of economy were directed towards the parliament process, federalism, welfarism, and of course the very frequent elections. I would like to lay to rest some of these doubters about democracies not being able to deliver. It was also mentioned that India is a very large country and democracies really work in much smaller and affluent countries in the West or in countries like Singapore. The fact is, nothing can be far from truth. Today, when the world faces a very deep divide, deglobalization, one thing that is holding India in a very different league is our democracy. Nation states are wanting to move their global supply chains and global value chains to trusted nations, to trusted partners. And is it therefore any doubt that India's kitty of foreign exchange reserves is swelling up, notwithstanding the recent dip, and heading towards the $1 trillion mark? Is it any surprise that India's FDI continues to surge year after year? What does this all suggest? It very strongly suggests that the world is gravitating towards nations which are open, which have institutionalized processes to deal with investments, and importantly, a country which values democratic system. India chose to be a democracy at the turn of our independence. We learnt it from the British, who are the so-called mother of democracy, and we, to my mind, did extremely well to now come into a 75th year after 17 vibrant and sometimes very noisy elections. What has India gained from this democracy? Look at the economic indicators. Look at the numbers that we are all witnessing. Growth rates are one of the highest in the world. We are moving on all aspects of our economy, be that infrastructure, manufacturing, service industry, and all indicators suggest that when the world slows down, as we are seeing some of that happening, India will continue to surge ahead. Country after country are engaging with India, whether it's at the political level or at the economic level. We have the British Prime Minister here in India today, saluting the largest democracy in the world. The US engagement with India has gone up, including India's participation in the very important Quad alliance, and that also clearly gives us an indication as to why India remains one of the most important nations in the world, because it's a democracy. In my own opinion, some nations which picked up democracy and gave up in between or had flirtation with democracy from time to time, like our neighbors on the western side, have suffered immensely by not continuing the path of democracy. India nourished its democracy. We moved our voting share of the populace from 45% at the time of independence to now 67%, which is higher than the US at 62% and UK at 66%, making it truly a very participative democracy. Our people decide who will govern them, who will take the country forward. Election after election, we see this happening. Today, when we have an elected government which commands a majority in Parliament, that gives momentum to our nation. That takes many of our cherished dreams forward at an accelerated pace. I would also like to point out that across the globe, MNCs choose leaders from countries that have cherished democratic values. Is it therefore any wonder that 10 of our Fortune 500 companies today are led by an Indian? Do you really see even one Chinese heading an MNC today? There is none. So very clearly, I personally believe that the difficulties that we may have gone through these last 75 years, but continuing to be on the path of democracy, has extremely held us well today. In my own opinion, going forward, the world will choose India over other large countries which don't follow democratic systems. We are getting the tailwinds to fire up our manufacturing. I heard Anil Agarwal just before me. He talked about the rich dividends that India can have by exploiting our natural resources. He talked about very large imports of electronics coming from the globe. That is fast changing with the government's scheme on PLI and promoting massive manufacturing in our country. So I really remain very hopeful. And I have no doubt that what Amitabh Kant mentioned yesterday, that by 2047, India will become a high-income country, is going to be achieved precisely because of the reason that India is a democracy. But it's also incumbent upon each one of us to have a unity in action to ensure that we cherish our democratic values, we strengthen our institutions, and we ensure that this democracy that we all are so proud of delivers to our masses at a massive scale. With that, I'll end my address by saying we are blessed to be in a country where all of us have the right to choose who governs us. We are very fortunate that this democracy has actually strengthened over the last 75 years and is on the course to be, to my mind, a world example of being the best democracy. Thank you. Hundreds of billions of dollars of real infrastructure on the ground. It's going to take us long years. So how do we accelerate our growth, which is predicated on a very strong infrastructure availability? I would say that is where the digital infrastructure comes into play. Common people on the streets holding a smartphone in their hands, and hopefully in not too distant future, wearables on their bodies will start to be connected to the global ecosystem of providers of healthcare, of education, of general well-being, and more importantly, connecting them to the markets domestically and worldwide to do their pursuits, whether they are in business or professional fields. The beauty that we have in India is of scale. Can you imagine if India were to be providing the connectivity or digital solutions at $50, $60, $70 a month? We would have had only a sliver of population enjoying the benefits and would not have been able to democratize the benefits of digitization. At $2.50 today, possibly $3, you will have ton of data guzzling capability, full connectivity, devices that will talk about your health and education provision, your e-commerce to payments. All this will be done at $2, $3, will make a dramatic difference to our acceleration, as I said. So what do people want? You want to be in the rural areas, but yet be connected to the ecosystem of the world. You want best education for your children. You want medical care for your elderly and children when they get sick. You want to be able to receive and send monies. You should be able to procure items through the net and make proper payments, and if required, quality checks. All this is now eminently possible through digital infrastructure. Cost per transaction has fallen by hundreds of factors of hundreds of X downwards. What does this all mean? With your limited amounts of money that we have as a mid-income country, you will be able to access and benefit from all variety of services that one is expected to get for affluent, rich people in the urban centers. I think that, to my mind, is the dramatic change that we'll see because of the support of digital infrastructure in our country. And that's why the JAM Trinity that the Prime Minister introduced and supports very strongly has made all the difference to allow our 1.3 billion people to be connected to the essential needs of his lives.
Right. Sir, India is a large country, and in many parts of the world, we have seen that the latest satellite communication technology is being put to use to deliver connectivity to the remote regions. Now, in India, how do you see this technology evolving? Because there are a lot of, obviously companies, including yours, who are looking at this space, I think, very actively.
Yeah, the holy grail for my industry over the last 3-4 decades has been to connect every individual on earth. And regretfully, despite huge effort by the industry collectively across the globe, there are still large number of people, and we are talking about over 2 billion people who are not connected to internet. Even in India, we have nearly 50% people who are not onto the broadband highway. That is not because of connectivity. I think more connectivity on 4G and 5G will deliver, almost to my mind, 90% of Indians onto broadband network. But there still will be 5 to 10% of people in India, and equally very large parts in Africa, where more than 40, 50, 60% will not be connected. And even in places like US, UK, Nordic countries, almost every country in the world will have pockets where you cannot reach a radio network. A terrestrial radio network cannot be brought today into the deep deserts of Rajasthan, into the Himalayas facing the borders on China, into the Gir forests, or indeed the oceans. And of course, while you are flying between Delhi and Bombay, to be staying connected on high-speed systems is not possible by terrestrial networks, much less fiber connectivity, which is still far and about between urban centers and rural areas. So how do you reach these people? Do you want to leave them behind as the world moves forward? That is not acceptable, and that's not sustainable for any nation. So the only way to provide connectivity into these areas is through satellite. And the current geosynchronous satellite systems, the geosystems, are too far. At nearly 36,000 to 40,000 kilometers, they do serve the broadcasting need, they do serve the slow, snail-paced broadband, but they are not in a position to serve high-speed broadband connectivity, which is required for today's smartphones and the needs of people. And that is where a LEO constellation can do the job. Why I say this with a great deal of confidence now is, at 50-degree parallel, which is any place above 50 degrees on the globe, is already connected on OneWeb satellites. Services are in play in Alaska and Canada just now, and the results are absolutely amazing. I mean, the high speed, the low latency, people who are using those terminals in their hamlets, villages, far-flung areas are connected as you and I are connected in cities. So satellites will become one more medium to really achieve the same objective that I just spoke about earlier, of connecting people to the global digital ecosystem.
Right. So the digital part of economy in India has been growing at a clipping pace, and it's almost touching $1 trillion within a $3 trillion economy that India is. Going forward, can we expect a much higher contribution from the digital ecosystem or the digital economy in the overall GDP growth in India? Or is it going to be sectoral, like we saw in the post-pandemic world, where certain sectors directly benefited, be it entertainment, education, healthcare, where technology was deployed or put to use?
Well, I would say, a digital infrastructure is relevant during good and bad times. It's one of those defensive sectors when we have seen the other parts of economy start to sometimes slow down or struggle with their growth factors. The digital side just does not stop. Even during pandemic, just the traffic moved from commercial centers onto homes. And I must say the companies all across the globe, and especially in India, did a fabulous job of ensuring when the traffic moved, they seamlessly moved their network dimensions towards the home traffic and were able to handle the massive surge in traffic. The consumption did not go down. Coming out of pandemic, we have not seen again a surge of traffic going up, it's got more rebalanced again into commercial and domestic centers, but the overall consumption pattern keeps on going up. So I would say digital infrastructure is really just starting in some sense. There is so many new use cases that are going to come to be experienced and witnessed by people, that you will see an acceleration of the digital business. So digital business in itself and those connected with the digital form are definitely going to gain. Use cases are only up to your imagination. I'm wearing a wearable which tracks my entire day and night. This stays with me all day and night, and I can tell you the benefit of just putting a little band on my wrist is enormous. It just tracks what I have done all day, how I have felt all day, how I've slept in the night. So just imagine, more and more things that are going to be serving the mankind, and some, things are being already seen and witnessed, like payments. I mean, we move billions of dollars now every month across the country. We move the same amounts every few weeks in Africa. We are seeing healthcare providers using the digital connectivity to provide healthcare services. E-commerce is now legendary in India, the way it's growing. Food delivery, shared economy like Uber and Ola cars and all. Almost everything is dependent on this. And is it any, therefore, surprise that large capital that is coming from outside, which is seeing the surge in FDI, coming in, is in the area of technology. Large amounts of money is moving into technology. To have just under 100 unicorns, out of which 60% came in the last just 2 years during pandemic, is unbelievable achievement for a country anywhere in the world. So I remain very, very optimistic about the potential of digital India and all those players who are going to be participating in the digital ecosystem. But do keep in mind, as we go forward now into the era of 5G, when Industrial 4.0 comes into being, the automobile manufacturers, the pharmaceutical companies, almost every part of our ecosystem, hospitals, will start to benefit from a digital economy, become more efficient, more profitable, and able to service customers at lowest cost.
Right. So can we say that 5G, when it rolls out completely, it's going to be a complete game changer, because we are already hearing a lot of new words and new technologies, be it metaverse, Web 3.0, wearables, all this basically circles back to 5G. So, I mean, what is your vision or your understanding of the 5G ecosystem or an economy which is powered by 5G network?
Yeah, again, a good question, because what is 5G, what does it do for us? It provides us massive capacities, which means suddenly from this video call, I could be virtually standing in front of you in a hologram form and in a full, in a sense, more or less a virtual human form, and addressing this audience in a much more remarkable way, because that can be delivered through 5G. The latency, which I'm sure the current video must be experiencing, completely goes away. Doctors are sitting in urban centers, having a machine in a remote small village, will be able to operate on patients seamlessly without worrying about any extra bleed or not putting a stitch in time or not being able to see the real life experience going on there on the patient. All that changes. There are going to be multiple use cases when you start to see flying taxis, drones all over us in the sky. And that's what you have to conjure as an image and work towards creating those use cases to then see the power of 5G. And 5G, of course, will give you a faster download of videos within milliseconds, and you'll be able to experience your videos much better. But I would say that's really the base part of it. I am more excited about what it can do. Today, our armed fleets, fighter jets, for example, have to communicate with each other in emergencies. You can't do it on a geosat-based networks. You'll have to do it on low latency, high-speed networks. So there are going to be massive opportunities which will be developed by our friends in the digital ecosystem. How they use this high-speed, low latency will be up to their imagination. We are seeing some early experiments in the Western world, in Korea, in Japan, in Germany, where industrial undertakings are now putting together captive networks in cooperation and collaboration with the telecom companies, and they are enhancing their productivity, they are enhancing their quality of their product, and importantly, reducing their price to the customer dramatically. So I would say 5G is important, and that's why we keep on requesting the government to make the 5G as a enabler for 100 other things that will develop in the country, to keep the spectrum at affordable pricing, to not load the industry too much, because it's a very highly capital intensive industry. In the end, we will deliver to this country very, very high quality 5G network with high speeds, low latency, and the ability to slice and dice the network for individual needs.
Right. So, sir, are you suggesting that we need to look at the spectrum pricing or the reserve pricing for 5G rollout and probably make it more affordable for the operators as well as the end user?
No, absolutely. Let's put that money into more rollouts. Let's put more, faster radio networks, cover more cities in the shortest possible time frame, rather than getting burdened by the spectrum, costs, and then slowly rolling out our networks. I would say the multiplier impact that a faster, high-speed, low-latency network can have for the country is many times more than what can be achieved by picking up some money up front.
Right. The second part of my question is basically about the regulatory framework, because we have seen as the technology is evolving, it is also becoming more complex. We have seen that, especially in the way crypto has evolved in many parts of the world, including India, the governments are still grappling with the concept of digital currency while they are working on it. Some countries have even banned instruments like crypto. Now, fundamentally, the issue is of the regulatory framework. Now, what is your, suggestion, advice, or what is your idea in terms of how India needs to kind of install a solid regulatory framework in place which enables the technological evolution, but at the same time has enough safeguards in place?
Well, regulation almost always lags technology. This is universal. This is global, because technology moves at a rapid pace and branches out its own way, and it creates subsets of technologies which the regulatory, process can never capture in one go. So at the base level, given the advent of digital, ecosystem around the globe, and let's talk about India, I think the government has done well now to look at privacy laws, look at data localization, ensuring customer consent. So I think those basic blocks are now in place. We'll keep on fine-tuning it as technology shifts left, right, or center. But by and large, that is, to my mind, in place now. We'll only get fine-tuned as we go forward. But there's a, now race going on to a very different place. And suddenly you are seeing a threat to fiat currencies. In my own opinion, when it comes to the sovereign legal tender, and suddenly you have a cryptocurrency which you can go and buy with rupees and transfer it at will through a wallet anywhere in the world to do what you want, I think it creates a serious problem. And the finance minister, when she raised the point in Washington in the last few days about a need for a global action or a global coordination to deal with the crypto issue, she's not wrong, because suddenly, can you imagine, it is no different, but of course much more skillful, and in a digital fashion. It's like printing money. So suddenly there are people out there who are going to be printing money, competing with nation states and fiat currency. There needs to be some envelope around it, and therefore it's no surprise that the whole globe is currently fretting about it, because in the end, to my mind, using currency notes and today's old ways of transferring monies around the globe is going to go away. Our next generation is going to look back and laugh, just like we look at those old fixed line rotary phones, to say, my God, you used to carry wads of notes and currency in your pocket to pay monies, tape, move large currencies around. banks had massive vaults to store cash, which occasionally gets into some difficulty or the other. They will look back and be very surprised. The world will move to cryptocurrency. The question is, how do nation states legitimize it? How is there a global world order to ensure that these transfers happen in a safe environment and the wrong people don't get access or benefit from this so-called cryptocurrency, which in some form or shape means you can't trace it, you can't track it. KYC is one of the biggest, initiatives around the globe, and if you now know, opening a bank account is not the same as it used to be when we were growing up. I would say when you go into these crypto wallets now, as you move forward into a new digital age of currency, the regulation will have to catch up. And I know that there's a feverish work going on in RBI, in governments, with the Fed and FSA in the US, in the UK, to put their arms around this cryptocurrency. Right now, it is partially understood, but in a very large part not understood. And that is, to my mind, a fear that there may be some very hard actions by the nation states to start to make it not legal going forward. And that needs to be protected. It's a fine technology. It needs to be protected, put to the use of mankind so they can be safe, very easily traceable type of ecosystem of money. But for that, the governments need to catch up. I hope they can invite the experts from the world to put together a regulation which can give them enough comfort to let this animal loose for the benefit of society.
That's very interesting. Okay, my last question to you. Obviously, we are celebrating 75th year of independence and heading towards India at 100. And we have been talking about different milestones, a $5 trillion mark, $10 trillion mark. Fundamentally, the next wave of growth will take a lot of innovation. And by that standard, if I have to ask you as an entrepreneur, what will it take for India to produce, let's say, next Apple or Google or companies of that scale and size? What will it take?
Well, I think India is very fast catching up with the globe. If I go back to my younger days of entrepreneurship, any company which had 100 crore of sales and a 5-7 crore of profit was a very large company, was a huge company actually. And it's not too long ago. And today, when young unicorns are, discovered by investors, 500, 400, 300 million dollars, which is few thousand crores, looks like loose change. So India today has actually come to a point where it's producing multi-$100 billion companies. There are so many companies which are in that bracket now at the high end. There are companies in the tens of billions of dollars. So my own view is that if we are comparing with Google, Apple, which are in the US, where tens of billions of hundreds of billions have not been a new discovery but has been there for a long period of time, give India 10, 15, 20 years, you will start to see $100 billion level of companies being in scores, in 20s, and there will probably be a $500 billion company or $1 trillion company emerging out of India during, hopefully, my lifetime.
Well, we can't wait for that day to come. Thank you so much, sir. That's very encouraging. And we hope you will lead the way. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation and taking our time. Thank you.